Is there anything I could say about this game that hasn't already been said 1,000 times? Well, probably not, but fuck it. I'm going to do it anyway. One of the first things you'll note when starting the game is just how good it looks. It lacks a tiny bit of polish, but this was 2015, still quite early in the PS4's life cycle. Due to the overwhelming underlying darkness of the world, not once was I ever pulled out of the immersion. The game is cold and unforgiving. In those first few hours, you will stumble and fall, you'll lose your echoes, you'll die continuously. You'll hit the first boss and think, what the fuck do I do now? Then suddenly the player will come to a crossroads. The game either pulls you in, or it culls those too unwilling to dig in and fight. Let's just get to the meat and potatoes, the combat. It is just excellent. I played the entire game with the starter weapon just purely because of how badass it is. Having a big scary guy charge at you with his sword reared over his head only to perfectly parry him and then rip his soul right out of his body. Every attack feels worthwhile. It doesn't feel like you're just aimlessly swinging, spamming R2, waiting for the enemy to die. You can return to previously completed areas and still die to the easier enemies if you don't keep your wits about you. Everything is engaging. The game is difficult, but it's not the worst. I do have a few gripes though. You pick a weapon at the start of the game, you'll upgrade it with these bloodstones you find, but since they have a limited supply, you're realistically forced to just pouring them all into one weapon, trying to get that to max level. It's due to this reason that you don't really have any incentive to switch weapons, even though there are plenty of others to enjoy, especially in the DLC. I found all these other cool weapons, but then immediately remembered that I don't have enough bloodstone to match it with my cleaver, so I didn't even bother trying them aside from testing the new animations. My last gripe with this game is how frustrating some of the boss fights can be. Not even the difficulty of the fight, but how far you have to run to get back to the arena after you die. It's infuriating. I die, respawn at the last lantern, and because I'm so pissed off, I just dwell on that the entire journey back to the boss arena, and by then I've lost my focus. If I were allowed to just immediately jump back into the action, I would memorize the patterns faster and beat the bosses faster. If you saturate your game with checkpoints, you lose the tension. I understand that, but some of these runbacks are pushing it, man. Having all this dead space between all the attempts just drives a wedge between the player and the game. Frankly, it just encourages the player to go and farm echoes for a little bit, level up, and then come back and beat the boss, instead of just playing the game as intended and learning the patterns. Look, I know, this is just how FromSoft's games are, right? Well, would the next Souls type game really be that bad if it had a few more forgiving checkpoints? I don't think so. I think it would just make it a little bit more accessible. Done a little bit of research, and apparently some of the newer Souls games, such as Sekiro and Elden Ring, do have more forgiving checkpoints, so good on From Software for taking that on board. I'm willing to die on this hill because if it weren't for these nagging issues, the game would be a masterpiece. The gothic aesthetic, the sinister realistic voice acting, the rewarding sense of progression and visceral combat. And because of this game, I have a newfound eagerness to revisit Elden Ring, so we'll see how that goes. Although I don't think Bloodborne is perfect, I understand why so many people do. I enjoyed this game from start to finish, so my criticism comes from a place of love and appreciation. If you have a PS4 or a PS5 and you haven't got around to playing it yet, give it a go, but be warned that you really have to get past that initial hurdle. How do you get past that initial hurdle? Well, practice really. I mean, just go out and kill a few beasts. It's for your own good. You know, it's just what hunters do.